Beyond and hello everyone, my name is Jonathon Dornbush and this is IGN's Podcast Beyond, our weekly PlayStation show where we go over all the greatest and latest things happening in the world of PlayStation, even when they take a year off from E3 like some lazy jerks, but we still have plenty to talk about from the show. Joining me this week for episode 595 is Lucy O'Brien.
Hello.
Hi Lucy, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
Yet again. And Tom Marks. Beyond, Tom, thank you for joining us as well. I'm going to take the names off the screen before someone gets mad at me that I accidentally leave them on all episode long. Before we dive into episode 595, I do want to mention if you're watching the video version, yes, the camera quality is still not great. That's because a lot of our equipment is still boxed up from E3, so things are in transit. We're using a lesser camera currently. And don't worry about the chair. It's fine. There's a red, weird crystalline
I was very aware of the chair. So
that's fair. I appreciate that. This is off to a great start already. And then, so of course we have that going on. We'll have the camera hopefully back to normal next week. And also the computer with all of our sound effects is gone. So I don't have sound effects to play. So I may call on one of you randomly to do jingles for me.
Oh, no.
I haven't warned you in advance of that, so just be prepared.
Okay.
But before we get to any jingles or anything like that, I want to just, how are you guys doing? We're back from E3. It's the second day back in the office.
I'm alive.
Yeah.
We're alive.
I think that there's just a general feeling of being grateful for being alive because E3 is a wonderful time and I'm always, this was my 8th E3. I'm always very, very, very grateful to be there. I know it's privilege. I know it's an extraordinary experience. But it's also a lot of work. And it takes a toll on the body.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so every year after E3 is over, I'm just like, wow, I made it. And also, we were just saying, knock on wood. Is this wood? I don't know. I don't think it is. I don't think any of this office is
there's no wood.
It's all synthetic.
We have brick and plastic.
That's it. No one got sick.
Yeah.
As far as we can tell.
Which is kind of crazy. I think we can probably talk about that a little bit of our suspicions, maybe why no one got sick in this weird year of E3. But before we get to that, a couple other things to mention. Max and Brian are not on this week. They happen to be at a shoot in Miami. They decided, hey, we've been traveling for a week. A video shoot.
They're on the beach.
Yeah, probably.
No, they're probably working very hard.
I would imagine a little of both. But so they're both out shooting for this week. And then, of course, unfortunately, Max, not unfortunately for him, he's going on vacation next week. So he won't be on next week's episode either. We'll have him back eventually. So for those asking about our Judgment thoughts, one, I don't believe the embargo on Judgment is up. I don't have information specifically on it, purposefully so, because I don't know if I'm allowed to say what information there may be about any sort of embargo. But we can't talk about it this week. Max won't be here to talk about it next week, but we will definitely have him here to talk about it soon. Some other people are also asking me, of course, about Crash Team Racing. We can't talk about that just yet. Also, embargoes and such, but that comes out Friday, I believe. So after Friday, we'll be able to talk about it, probably next week's show. Other than that, though, I think that covers embargo questions I've been getting since we got back. Oh, and for those who were wondering why we didn't have a show last week, of course, E3 was happening. We didn't have a live show slot for Beyond. The other shows did because PlayStation wasn't there. Mm-hmm. And, a lot goes into planning the programming of our live show. It's a very heavily structured thing. And obviously, without a PlayStation show, it just didn't make sense for them to throw in a Beyond. We did record an episode of Beyond on Thursday night, the final night of E3 last week. It's an audio-only episode that I will be putting up this week. It was born out of my love for old episodes of Drunk Beyond, which used to be a tradition here that we haven't done in a couple of years. It's not quite a Drunk Beyond. I would say it's more like a tipsy Beyond. As it goes on.
Speaking from a guest perspective, I would say it was a little tipsy. A little tipsy, yeah. By the end of the second hour, I think it's roughly a 3-hour show. Okay. By
the end of the second hour, and then there'll also be some interstitials from earlier in the week where I recorded just our descent into delirium for that. So
you captured some prime crazy moments.
There's some really funny stuff.
Yeah.
I had a really fun time recording that episode. I hope you enjoy it. It is a wide-ranging, our impressions of E3, but also just a snapshot of our mental brains during E3. So we will be going over impressions here of some of the biggest stuff at E3, of course, because that show, for reference, it weirdly ended up having, we had members of Beyond, Unlocked, and NVC on it, so we go over kind of everything at the show. It's not just PlayStation specific. So look forward to that. I'll definitely let everyone know on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere when that episode goes up. But look forward to that. That'll not be a numbered episode. That'll just be a fun little interstitial.
If I may,
yes,
it's chaos. but it was actually a lot of fun.
Were you there the whole time, Tom?
I was there the whole time that we sat down to record, except for the moments which people won't be able to hear where I had to like run to my hotel room to drop something off or like get tea or anything
It's
like
a
that.
very like moving parts episode. There's a
Yeah.
lot of coming in and coming out of conversation. It's a lot of back and forth.
I just remember like I was on it and then I was like, I'm going to leave now.
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to go get another drink.
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
you and JR like went outside and then we didn't see you for like an hour. But like that's what happened on the last night of E3. No one was under obligation for that episode.
Yeah,
And of course, they flew out of town. So again, Max and Brian were not on that episode. Just setting the stage for that. And of course, this is a long announcement setting up everything, but I do want to mention also, so I know I've been mentioning for the last few weeks, Beyond 600 is of course coming up, and Beyond 600 is still coming up. Unfortunately, and you don't know how much this breaks my heart to have to say, we are unable to do a live event like we were hoping to do in San Francisco. Next week was our hope. We unfortunately, due to timing, due to other obligations for people in the office, a large part of it comes down to live shows are a very heavy toll on our video and our production teams, and the timing could not be worked out to have them in between Gamescom and Comic-Con and E3 and all the planning and all the outages and all of that. We were unfortunately not able to use the space to do that. And as someone who has, of course, loved all of the live Beyond anniversary episodes, it crushes my heart to have to be able to tell you that. It seemed like things were there. It was sort of one of those, everything is 95% locked down in those weeks, and that's why I felt comfortable saying it. And then that 5% during E3 reared its ugly head, and we unfortunately were unable to make everything come together and gel and work. It bums me out so much. It really, really does, because obviously we want to do something special, and our intention is still very much to do something special for Beyond 600. We are roughly 5 episodes away. We will be planning things. We will be involving as much of the community as we can in that episode in whatever forms we think make the most sense and are most easily able to do. Obviously, the regular work week and outages happen, but I think we're going to hopefully still be able to put together a really fun commemorative 600th episode. It's an insane milestone, and as someone who's been listening to the show since episode 1, I would not want to let it pass without something hugely, emblematic of how big of an achievement it is that the show has run for that long. So again, I am so sorry that I know I've been talking about it. 600 still is coming. We're so close, and I do want it to be as special as it can be. It just unfortunately can't be special in the live form. But
it's still going to be awesome.
Yeah, we're still
going to be awesome.
Still prepping, still planning. Mm-hmm. We're going to be in the office I will be in the office that week. Things will be happening. We'll be planning stuff in the weeks beforehand to make it work and come together. So you'll hear more from me about that as those things do come together, but it just won't be a live show. And again, I'm so sincerely sorry about that, but I'm really excited by what we're going to put together and by the show we have this week. And unfortunately, I can't transition with a jingle. So instead of a jingle, what I'm first going to do is ask for a shout-out opportunity to give you both time to prepare a News Crunch jingle that you'll have to sing yourselves. A few of the last few weeks on this show, we've been asking you occasionally to give shout-outs to someone a friend in the extended Beyond family, for all the good work they do. Something silly, something nice to say to them. We've called out Jared Petty and Barrett Courtney, our former producer. This week, I want you to, if you're listening to this episode or watching this episode, please reach out to Miranda Sanchez on our team.
Yes.
She is at Havoc Rose on Twitter, which is HAVOKROSE, and say, hey, Miranda, your Gears 5 IGN First coverage is amazing. Say that in some form or another. Just let her know she's doing an amazing job. I want to continue to put out positivity in the world when it seems like negativity is rapping at our door every day. So please do that. Please say hi to her. She's doing a tremendous job. She was putting up these stories during E3 in addition to all the other crazy, amazing E3 coverage she was doing. It was incredible, the amount of work she puts in. It's always incredible. She is easily one of the best, if not the best of us. She is undoubtedly one of my favorite people in this office, and you should absolutely be reading and watching her work if you haven't already. So be sure to reach out to her. Again, that's HAVOKROSE. And please give her some love.
Yeah, no, Miranda's absolutely killing it. And I also just want to take a moment just to give everyone who worked at E3 a shout out. I think our team really crushed it this year. I feel like we always crush it. But, sometimes I see like people love to put the boot into IGN a little bit occasionally. It's like kind of a sport to a lot of people on the fringes of YouTube and stuff like that. And as much as I get that it's fun, just being part of this team and seeing how we deliver every year and how much passion and love and joy there was at E3 this year, and expertise there was at E3 this year, was an incredible sort of thing to be part of. And yeah, I just, we see the negative stuff on Twitter a lot, and I just kind of want to just throw it out that we're a pretty amazing team, and yeah, it was a pleasure to be part of it.
You both knocked it out of the park this year.
As did you.
Yeah,
as did you, Dono. You really did.
Thank
we
you.
We were, at the forefront of news, and it was an amazing thing to be.
Thank you.
To see.
I appreciate that. Yeah, you both did phenomenal work. The entire team did amazingly. Lucy, we will talk about the game a little bit, but obviously, like, things kicked off for you on like a personal coverage note of like with Dying Light 2 preview coverage, and then into the rest of the show, and obviously making sure we had such amazing, constant and very to the minute features work that we were following up on stuff so smartly and so quickly, and that was amazing. And Tom, stop being so good at your job.
I think we all suck.
Okay, good. Bring us back down to earth. I appreciate that. No, you killed it this year with, of course, I know it's a little bit of deja vu, but with Cyberpunk.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Yeah, of how you basically, it was the same thing you kind of had to do last year, but you got to interview Keanu Reeves.
I did do that.
Oh my God.
We do talk about that.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah, we do talk a lot about it on the Drunk Beyond, but I've not up yet.
Okay.
We can talk about that in a second. You got to interview Keanu Reeves, of course, after the reveal that he is in Cyberpunk 2077.
Yeah, I did that thing.
And he's just the worst man, right?
No, he
just
was pretty
meaningful.
terrible.
Yeah.
Well-known terrible man,
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves.
Very cold, gave me a side eye the whole time. No, he was great. He was really nice. It definitely was the feeling, like, he wasn't like giving me a hug sort of nice. It was just like he was super down to earth and super like willing to talk about stuff, and definitely willing to talk about what he could talk about. And then the thing that, we all interview a lot of people. I interview a lot of people, and you can always tell when someone just either doesn't want to be there or doesn't really care about the thing they're talking about. And like, you could very clearly tell that Keanu Reeves is not really a gamer, right? Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't really play many games, but he was so genuinely enthusiastic about this game and about the role he was playing in it. And I really appreciated that, because it was like, he doesn't have to, like he was so amazed when we were talking, and he kind of talked about this on the stage at the Microsoft conference a little bit too, about this idea of like, he was really impressed by the idea that you could like pick your path, and if you wanted to be a hacker, you could be a hacker. If you wanted to like go guns blazing, you could do that. And that just really impressed him. And it's like, I'm super happy, Keanu, that you're discovering RPGs and player choice in 2019. Like, that's not a new thing, but like, he was so genuinely enthused by it that it was just infectious, and it was like very, very cool. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. So
what you saw on stage very much translated to the interview?
Yeah, he was just having a blast on stage, wasn't he?
Yeah, he really was. But like, that was what was so wonderful about it, I think, is that, yeah, obviously it was great to see Keanu, but he could have just like gone onto the stage, said 2 lines, trod it off.
It could have been the Yoko and Paul.
Well, exactly. Very much like, let's go and like get my money, and I'll do the obligatory thing. But instead, he was very passionate, and it was very infectious. And I'm so pleased to hear that was what he was like in the interview.
Yeah, and I don't think that was put on. I think he just, I think he genuinely, he's famous enough and probably wealthy enough. I don't know that, but from any experience thing or anything, but like probably wealthy enough that he can just pick the roles he wants to take. And apparently CD Projekt approached him about this and gave him an opportunity to collaborate a little bit on what the character would be like and how it would behave. And he said he really liked the idea that it wasn't just his face, but he was actually going to be mocapping and like doing the movements in it. And he just sounded really like into it.
Did he say whether any of his scenes were with Lady Gaga? Or
No,
that still remains.
I think we can put that rumor to bed at this point.
Do you think because,
we'll see.
But wasn't the Lady Gaga rumor didn't it spring from someone saying there's a big unexpected celebrity, or was it specifically always Lady Gaga?
The Lady Gaga thing sprung from a couple things.
Yeah.
Somebody claimed that they saw her going into their office in Warsaw. Is that where they're from?
I believe so.
I'm sorry. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Anyway, someone claimed they saw her going into that office, and then a million years ago, there was a tweet interaction between her and CDPR about something, and so everyone started drawing the conclusions. And there might have been that celebrity rumor. I don't know that part, but
well, Lady Gaga is she plays video games, right? Like she's a gamer. Like she loves Bayonetta. That's the one.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like her one. You know, so yeah.
And
they are in Warsaw.
Okay, thank you. And we do know that Keanu signed on to this project in like July of last year. So he's been on it for a year. So if there were celebrity rumblings, probably that's who they meant.
Yeah, I would assume so. That was more just a joke about it. But I think this is a good enough time to jump into News Crunch, which I wanted to do a little differently this week and kind of talk about the biggest PlayStation 4 related games that were at E3 before we get into some larger general topics about E3 and PlayStation. And so with that, Lucy, please give me a News Crunch jingle.
Okay, this is from my memory of the actual jingle.
Okay.
Extra, extra, read all about it. Ha 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 ha. News Crunch.
Ronnie, please turn that into a new News Crunch jingle. Thank you very much.
Is that about right?
You were close, yeah.
I feel like maybe I got the laugh and the News Crunch around the wrong way, but like...
I don't think he says news. I think it's just a crunch, if I remember correctly. But that's just kind of where it came from. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
You're most welcome.
Of the games I wanted to talk about, obviously there was not a lot of PlayStation news out of E3 2019, though there is one piece of kind of possibly big PlayStation news I do want to talk about in a bit. But first, let's talk about basically, I think, 3 or 4 of the biggest PlayStation 4 games. At least we know they're coming to PS4 for now. PS5 may change that, but let's start with Cyberpunk. We all saw the demo, correct? Mm-hmm, Lucy, you saw it as well. Yep. Tom, obviously you did our coverage for it. I saw it as well. We came back with our jackets and such.
I missed out on the jacket.
You didn't get a jacket?
I didn't get the jacket.
Go for $400 on eBay and you're fine, apparently.
Don't do that. Don't do that. CDPR actually said explicitly don't do that because they're going to be selling a jacket that looks like it.
Yes, fair warning.
I had my ticket to get the jacket, but I had to bounce from that demo like 5 minutes early, so I missed out.
Yeah.
Well,
CD Projekt Red, if you're listening, I still think I have that ticket somewhere. If I can cash it in, thank you. Please and thank you.
Since you did see most of the new demo itself, why don't you and Tom, you guys give me your impressions of it. For those who don't know, it was a new 50-ish minute demo of Cyberpunk. We got to see a new region of Night City, Pacifica, and we essentially were led through a mission, and a big point of what they were showing us was the idea of how you can differently approach missions. So they had 2 different character builds, one with a male and one with a female V, and they would show sort of different builds, one more like fighter, one more techie, and show you kind of how they would approach it. So what did you both think of what they showed us?
I thought it looked amazing. I think Cyberpunk is going to be an amazing game. I think that it wasn't quite as strong a demo as last year's demo. Yeah. I wasn't like, oh my God, this is so new and ambitious and vital as I was last year. I thought that there was there was a bit more focus on sort of like gunplay and combat and stuff like that. And I'm less interested in that because I know what that looks like as I am in sort of world building and that sort of thing. So yeah, I thought it was a very, very impressive demo, but it just wasn't showing me anything as incredibly sort of new. Because when I came out of that booth last year, I was like, gamer show. Like I had almost like a nervous tick for like hours afterwards. Like gamer show.
It was really disconcerting, honestly, last year.
I know, yeah. It took a while. I thought I was going to have to be hospitalized, but like honestly, it was still a really impressive demo. I again think it's shaping up to be something incredible. But yeah, it wasn't blow your socks off.
Last year set the bar so high.
Yeah.
I think that's part of what it was, is that last year was so immediately unexpected and impressive, and oh my God, we were seeing it for the first time and no one else could see it and no one else in the world had seen it, and it set the bar so high that this year was essentially just a good demo of an incredibly cool looking game, and as a result we were like, yeah, that's cool. And it's like not a sign of how the game looks. It was just like you could literally never hit that bar.
Yeah, I don't think any of us came out of that demo being like, "Oh no, Cyberpunk's looking in rough condition now."
No, exactly. I think the thing to sort of accentuate here is that when you're at E3 and you're seeing these demos, is you're not always thinking, how is, this game is shaping up to look amazing. This game is shaping up to look terrible. Like, you're just continually sort of going from demo to demo. And often some games that may be pretty average demo spectacularly. Like some games that end up to be kind of like middle of the road demo incredibly well. And you're just like, wow, that was such a amazingly well put together experience.
One of my favorite demos last E3 was Anthem.
Right.
That game demoed amazingly well.
Yeah. And some games that are probably going to be, games of generation, demo fine. And it's just like, it's because companies put so much stock into these particular sort of like vertical slices of their games, and they're not always emblematic of what the final product will be. But you can't help but judge, especially if one game had such an incredible presence at the year before. They're not always going to live up, as you say, live up to that high bar.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that like we're saying, oh, it's going to be like Cyberpunk's going to be crap. It's just that it demoed fine.
It was more of I think it's gotten to the point where, obviously, because it is such a game we've talked about so much and picked apart so much from what we have seen, it's kind of one of those things where I think we're all itching to be like, okay, I just want to actually play it now. It's like, I'm so glad to have seen 50 more minutes. For me, the most interesting part was like seeing this new part of the city and exploring the different neighborhoods in the way that they explained how like the culture of Pacifica had been grown up and how it was supposed to be this tourist destination and kind of a failed dream of that. And all that sort of stuff was way more fascinating to me than seeing a few of the guns in play or seeing some of the special moves. Because for me, that's going to be so much more interesting when I actually get to test them out. And
I think that was my main thing with it. It's just like, I'm so much more interested in the world than I am in the combat. I just think because the world is what fascinates me. Mm-hmm. The world is what grabs me
personally. The potential for what role I can play in the world too.
Right.
Well, also, and I'm excited for Cyberpunk, but the world is the only part that I think that they have definitively proven is cool so far. Like, is gonna work. Mm-hmm. Like, I this isn't saying that I think it's gonna be bad, but I will not know, based on either demo I've seen, how fun the combat is or the driving is or any of those things are until I'm playing it myself.
Yeah,
because there was a section of this demo where the person rips a turret off of its base and starts using it as a minigun to start shooting people, and that was really cool thematically. And then there's this like 2-minute stretch of them just kind of laying into dudes with a minigun, and it doesn't look very interesting. Right? Like, the combat didn't look bad. It just was like, is that a demoing problem, or is that the combat is maybe less spectacular than we think it is, right?
Yeah. And I think it's a demoing problem. Like, I just think that it was potentially just not the particular vertical they should have focused on.
Yeah, and I did really appreciate this demo going back and forth. I liked that they were like, here's a hacker kind of stealthy way to get through this, and now here's the same person, but instead of hacking, they're using strength. And I liked that they showed both of those paths. Again, that's not anything that's really brand new in a video game, but they seem to be doing it in a really, really cool way. And I think this demo did a good job of putting you in the shoes of what it's actually going to be like to play to a degree that the first demo didn't.
Yeah,
and and ultimately it just got me more excited. But there are a lot of questions that I just want to play the game to actually know.
Yeah, and of course, Cyberpunk was IGN's Game of the Show for E3. So again, I think any precautions that we have or any uncertainty that's in our voices is not, oh, we didn't enjoy it. It's just definitely like I want to play it now. Like, I want to see this thing in action outside of a 50-minute manicured demo.
Was it you I was talking to about how I can't think of another game that has shown 2 full hours of gameplay without letting anybody play it?
Yeah.
Right? This game has a release date and has shown 2 full hours of the game in behind closed doors demos that, like, that's crazy to me. All vertical slices are usually like 20, 30 minutes, right? But this is like, they've shown us a fair chunk of
They've shown us the length of journey.
Right.
For this game. So yeah, and as you mentioned, we do actually have a date now, April 16th, 2020. So it is becoming more and more of a real game. Again, we've seen 2 hours of gameplay, and I'm excited to actually play 2 and hopefully a lot more hours.
I'm really excited. Even with a whatever-ish demo, there was not another game at E3 that I think I'm more excited for. Potentially, like, I'm really, really excited for Final Fantasy VII Remake. I think that'll be cool, but, like, yeah.
And what a transition we have there. Final Fantasy VII was, of course, a major player at E3 this year. After the re-reveal trailer from the State of Play a few weeks back, it was one of two marquee games, and we're going to talk about both of those marquee games from the Square Enix press conference, pretty much because everything else in between was a game that's already out. So that was a press conference. But they opened with a sizable chunk of Final Fantasy VII Remake info, gameplay, hints of what this package may be, though still uncertainty about what this package may be. Lucy, did you get to see the demo?
I did not get to see the demo. By all accounts, it was wonderful. I'm very excited by it. I really love what Square has done with the combat in particular. And by all accounts, it works in play. Yeah,
so the combat, before going on too much, so the combat is a mixture of real-time and ATB, where you kind of basically can pause time and choose your command.
Yeah, so it definitely, it's kind of a great sort of product, I shouldn't say that, but it's a great combat system for those who grew up with the old ATB system and those who are more familiar with the more kind of fluid, free-flowing, like Final Fantasy 15 combat system. Yes. I think it's hit a great middle ground. I think it all looks wonderful. Again, I won't speak too much to that because I didn't see the behind closed doors stuff. Well, I do have some questions around. I mean, so many of us have questions around Final Fantasy VII because obviously it is going to be a very lengthy game. It's going to have enough content to spread across 2 Blu-ray discs, but it is also the official line that Square is using is part 1 in this project. So the first game in this project. In this project meaning the project of bringing Final Fantasy VII to life in a modern day games engine. But what I'm kind of confused by, and I think what Square is still figuring out, is how are we going to have part 1 be this big and this ambitious and explore, the whole world, like the whole area of Midgar in such an incredibly detailed way. And then suddenly there's going to be a new generation of consoles and Square's going to be working on the second. They're still working on the first.
Yeah.
Square's going to be working on the second part while that new generation comes and everyone is slowly transitioning towards that. How is that going to work? Like, that's the thing that just I'm so confused by. If PlayStation 4 had just launched and Square was undertaking this project, or even in 2015 when it was originally announced, if Square was undertaking this project and there weren't so many delays and going from one studio development had gone really smoothly, it would have made more sense. But right now I just don't understand how this is going to work.
It feels like they are taking what was Final Fantasy 13 and those multiple releases and making that big of a universe out of the one game they've already released. But, and in saying that, this first thing is going to focus just on Midgar, it's going to expand what usually has been the first 6 to 7 hours of the game to people.
Which is very, very exciting.
A full, the potential to explore this world that is obviously so beloved in such more detail. Hopefully there is enough there that they can actually create that is as interesting and memorable as what was there originally. That's obviously a big thing to see what will live up to and what won't. Our nostalgia of that past stuff. I say hour, and I've only played the first 2 hours of Final Fantasy VII. But yeah, it's such a weird time for this product specifically to come out because it is going to have to bridge that generational gap. And we've talked about it a bit before in the past. I do think this transition to the new gen in terms of adoption rate by players is going to be slower than it has in generations past. So you could probably pretty easily, if episode 2 comes out in 2021, this is coming out March 2020, they've had to put in all the work toward asset building and engine stuff and all the base work that needs to go into this game. If they then can move to episode 2 and do that within a 2-year cycle, I could see that still.
Can they do that within a 2-year cycle? I mean, that's the question, right?
Well, so they brought production in-house, I want to say.
It was announced 2017.
That it changed.
Is that right?
Yeah, I'm gonna check that, but it's no more than 3 years.
Yeah. Until
now, so I would say it's roughly about 3 years of production in house. Take a year off of that because of all the work that had to go into sort of rebooting it and the technical stuff. But of course, there is the technical stuff of then moving to PS5 and other.
Yeah.
One of the weird things too is this is a PS4 exclusive debut. The press release, I think we've all been talking about it a bit like it's a PS4 exclusive. The press release announcing the release date and everything says exclusive, like console first exclusive, like it's coming to PS4 first, which opens the door to other platforms, especially as we get to a new gen. It's there's so many questions to me, both on like the actual how this is going to go after episode 1, whatever you want to call it, and also just the logistical side on the contract stuff. Like the lawyer nerd in me that I've adopted from my father, who is a lawyer, wants to know like how screwed over was Sony by them delaying this game for multiple years and whatever agreements they had, and how has that influenced how the game is going to be released from now on. That all is a mystery. Like, it'd be weird if Final Fantasy VII Remake Episode 1 is coming out after Project Scarlet is out, but it's coming to Xbox One then.
Yeah. It's just there are so many challenges ahead of Square even before we see. We've okay, great. We've seen the collector's edition. That's awesome, but the game is not finished. Like in our live show when we were interviewing them, they were like, we are going to be going hard to hit that release date. Which
makes me just want them to delay it a little bit.
Yeah. So I would almost just like, oh, no, but then they'd have to start again and like, oh, God, yeah. There are
just delay it to PS5.
Only, yeah, exactly. Yeah. There are still a lot of still a lot of hurdles.
But I thought we heard a bit about PS5 stuff that it would be like easily... Like, didn't they say that it would be built on the same architecture?
So Sony has said previously too that they're going to like cross-generational play is a really big thing for them.
Right.
So I imagine there will be some sort of easy way to transition a save file from Remake Episode 1 to Remake Episode 2 if Episode 2 is PS5 only.
Mass Effect did it.
Yeah.
Mass Effect did that. I'm just thinking of series that did the generation jump.
We also have a much better infrastructure now than we did back then.
Halo, like heaps of games have done it. It's
exactly.
It's
just a weird time.
It's just weird because it's one game.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My concern is not even nearly as much about the platform switch in the middle of all of this. It's just the idea that they don't know yet, right? That's the only part of this that concerns me more, is that it sounds a bit like what they're trying to do or what they're hoping is... It's Final Fantasy VII Remake. Everybody wants it. It's going to sell well. We won't worry about that till later, and we're just going to make the sequels as they come, which is scary to me.
It definitely...
I would have been much more confident, regardless of platform stuff and regardless of next-gen stuff, I would have been much more comfortable if they had said, all right, here's the plan. These times and dates are going to change, but... Probably this is going to be a 3-part thing. The second part's going to come out in 2022. We don't know what systems. The third part's going to come out in 2025. That's what our plan is. Like, even if they had given us a thing that was like that and just said, this is crazy work in progress, but we've been thinking about it, it would have made me more at ease.
Yeah, them saying in an interview, which I think the Square then later replied with more of a official word on it, but them saying in an interview, essentially, we don't know what comes next.
Yeah.
Is an odd proposition.
Yeah, I did find it... Square, obviously the messaging was really vague in Square's press conference about how it was going to roll out. And I just found that very odd because, that press conference was really early on in E3. Obviously, Square was open to doing interviews. So what did they kind of expect was going to happen? Because of course everyone wanted to know. And I was people were tweeting at me being like... is this the full game right out the gate, or is it episodic? And I just think that's a bizarre question for people to still be having after you've like gone into the nitty gritty of like combat and stuff like that.
We even had to like dig apart the Blu-ray disc comment because they said that, and we were like, it was kind of confusing what they meant. Did they mean this first part is 2 discs? Did they mean the whole project is 2 discs? Is the first part all Midgard? How long is that? Because they said it's a full-size game, but does that full-size game could be 5 hours, 10 hours, 30 hours, 60 hours? It doesn't, like, you have no idea. And it's interesting because I really, really loved what they showed this E3.
Me too, yeah.
The gameplay they showed off, the depth they went into, the fact that they basically just showed us a full boss fight. Like, I loved all of that, and I really appreciated it. And that has left us with the boring questions, because the boring questions are unfortunately important, and we don't have the answers. And now we kind of have the answer to like, okay, what is this game? And now we need to know, well, okay, what comes next? How long is it? All that stuff.
Yeah, it was a weird showing in that sense of like how it left us with so many questions, even though we saw so much of it. And obviously, if it hits its March release date, we'll have more answers within a year. But yeah, it's a weird place to be at. Tom, what were you going to say?
Well, and the reason that it's so scary to me that they don't have a plan is because of its history, right? Because of the fact that it had this delay and this brought in-house and development wasn't going well. The idea that they just be like, yeah, we're just going to make this game and figure it out leaves me with this lingering dread that we're going to get one part and then nothing else.
Yeah.
Right? And that would be so bad. Like, I'd be so sad.
And you can just imagine it becoming a cautionary tale.
Right. And I don't want it to be.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily, like, clearly they've been doing a better job in-house and they know what they're doing, but man, it's scary with a game that already had a checkered past to hear that they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants.
Exactly, feeling their way, yeah.
And speaking of, Square's press conference opened with a game that we got a lot about, but also have so many questions left after its long development history. The show then ended with a game that we saw a lot of, but still have a lot of questions about after its long development history, and that was Marvel's Avengers, which is being developed by Crystal Dynamics, the Tomb Raider reboot team, in partnership with Marvel Games, who of course has been in partnership with Insomniac for Spider-Man, with other studios for projects recently. So we saw on stage 2 trailers. One was sort of like the introduction trailer where there was some talk about what's gameplay in here. Is anything gameplay in here? We can speak to that stuff. That gave us a sense of what the game will look like, the story of it. And then there was another trailer that implied, hey, they mentioned on stage, we're gonna keep adding more heroes to this game that you'll get to play presumably and all that. And the first hint was Hank Pym, Ant-Man. But they showed that. They talked a little bit about it on stage. We interviewed them on stage on the IGN Live show, talked to them afterwards. A few of us saw behind closed doors demos of the game, which was a 30-minute guided gameplay experience. And after that, though, we are still kind of left wondering what the actual gameplay experience of Avengers is going to be like. Again,
yeah, I think this was one of it left us with a lot of unanswered questions, but like really basic unanswered questions. Like that's the thing that I was like, I'm just so like confused by sort of Square's thing in general, just because like Final Fantasy that's fantastic. Loved seeing the combat. Loved like going into that sort of like level of detail, but also how are you going to roll out? Whereas with Avengers, it was kind of like, okay, this is going to be, this is the package, but what is the game? Like the actual demo was so vague, and I understand to a certain degree focusing on the voice acting, which they
we also
did.
Got that trailer, behind the scenes
a lot, and that's like cool, prestige voice acting, but that doesn't really mean much to me if I don't know what the actual game is.
And so the demo we saw was about 25 to 30-ish minutes that seemed to me, be the tutorial level because, and we can get to it in a bit, this level essentially gave you small pockets of gameplay per the 5 Avengers that you'll get to play as, which are Thor, Captain America, Iron Man, Black Widow, and Hulk. And it kind of was the inciting incident for the game of its A-Day. We're celebrating the new Avengers headquarters on the West Coast in San Francisco. There's an attack, and the 5 of them have to come together, and then so it alternated between their 5 gameplay styles. It seems, based on what we've been told, though, you will get to pick your character who you want to play as, and you can freely switch between in between missions, but you'll get to pick the character you want to play per campaign mission, and customize them with maybe different outfits. You can upgrade their abilities, and there are sort of like a leveling system in there, and you'll be able to really focus in on a specific character or two. But the demo we saw was just quick hits of each person's gameplay, and so we don't know what it's going to be like to play through a full campaign level. And then there's, of course, a co-op element to it that we didn't get to see any sort of form of that, where you'll be able to go off on, I think, specific missions and play with friends in co-op. If anyone from Crystal Dynamics, I know they're relatively close by, if anyone from Crystal Dynamics wants to come on the show to talk about it more, open invitation. You are welcome to come by anytime.
Because there's a lot of confusion, too, that was unfortunately not their fault.
Exactly.
Reported on, which was this E3, what is it called, Coliseum panel, basically like a panel that was going to be, had its description leaked before E3, and it said something about like continuous single player and co-op, and so everyone got in their heads that it was going to be like this online game, and then it's coming out now that it seems like it's maybe a lot more single player focused than everyone assumed, and everyone kind of the way they made it seem from that. But we still don't know because there's still not like a lot of clear answers because they didn't really tell us what the game is yet. They just sort of showed like Avengers that don't look like the movie Avengers but do look like the movie Avengers yelling at each other. And that's all I got from it, was that they had this big emphasis on story, and they wanted you to know it's a story-driven game, and it's going to be very story-driven because that's what people have been wanting, I guess. And so that's what they showed, but they didn't show anything else.
The mixed messaging of how integral co-op will be, especially with that pre-leaked description, how integral that will be, how fun it will actually be to play together, what form that will take, or whether it's not just us spamming attacks at enemies, or if there will be really interesting level design to it. That all is still really up in the air, and Crystal is a team I really trust. I think, like the Tomb Raider reboot and Rise were phenomenal. And Marvel obviously had a really great partnership with Insomniac, and having spoken to some members of the Marvel Games team, like Bill Roseman and a few other people, they obviously really care about these partnerships and really want to put value into it. I just feel like what they showed wasn't the best way to debut this game. But it doesn't mean that games can
again. I feel like again this comes back to the pitfalls that E3 presents publishers and developers every single year, because there's this pressure, especially when, these publishers are holding these big, massive conferences that they need to fill with exciting content. There's this pressure to debut things that aren't ready to be debuted. And I feel like Final Fantasy VII and the Avengers just weren't ready. I feel like they weren't ready to be shown because these messages were so mixed and because we were left so confused. Again, it's just another argument for why E3 is becoming increasingly a problem for publishers, and why publishers are bowing out of the immense pressure that is put on their heads by attending.
And that's a really good point in all of this too, is that even if we're getting it all wrong, even if this game is actually very good and this was a bad showing and that's kind of the whole story here, it was still that, right? Like this was 100% a marketing flub, regardless of the quality of the game, because all it did was frustrate people and leave people confused and annoyed, and not really with a good sense of what this game is, unless you read every single interview from every outlet to start to piece this together.
Which you shouldn't have to do.
Yeah, right. Exactly. I really do hope that, because as a big Avengers fan, as a fan of the devs, as someone who still sees the potential in this,
same here. Yeah.
I really hope we get a great preview beat of this game where it's like, hey, here's 3 hours of this game. You get to play like the kind of classic Sony preview beat that we get so often. Here's this 3-hour chunk of the game. Play as whoever you want, experience it, and we actually get a sense of it in that way.
And this has happened a lot, right? With the biggest thing to me was like Doom 2016. You remember they did a beta for that game where they did a multiplayer beta ahead of the release, and everyone was like, this is terrible. Like, it was a really bad showing of that game because they just showed multiplayer, and everyone was expecting it to be an absolute bomb, and then the campaign ruled and was not indicative of what they had shown at all.
And sorry.
No, that's it.
I was going to say Avengers will have a beta. So we're all going to get a chance to see what this is actually going to play like. It's going to be a beta, I believe, coming first to PlayStation 4 next year, or maybe earlier this year. They haven't really said when that beta will be coming, I believe. But there will also be PS4 exclusive content on the way. Of course, everyone wants that to be Spider-Man. We'll see what it actually is. I can't imagine they would prevent half the audience from playing as Spider-Man. But yeah, it was a weird showing for a game that I've been so excited for just on the names of the talent attached alone since the beginning of 2017.
Yeah,
it just seemed like a slam dunk, right? Like they should have just taken the ball and put it in the net, and it was like, why is this the conversation?
And I think we all had that expectation that it was going to be a slam dunk, and so when it wasn't, even like the first sign that it wasn't a slam dunk, I think it just kind of
snowballed.
Yeah, but it was interesting, Jonathan, because even like when we were having a conversation about this yesterday, and a lot of people were like, oh, there hasn't been a good Marvel game or blah blah blah. There hasn't, like, apart from, you know, Marvel Ultimate Alliance and Marvel vs. Capcom or something, like, you know, and Marvel Spider-Man, like, you know, you should have expected it to be a bomb. And it's like, no, it's like it's with that studio attached in particular, and also with the degree of attention that is paid towards the Avengers these days. It has to be a slam dunk. You know what I mean?
And that's why, like, I genuinely believe whether this game is a 10 out of 10, we just haven't seen it yet, or whether it is not living up to those standards yet, I do think it's a game that Marvel is going to put all the attention it needs into until it is successful.
And when we say attention, we mean dollars.
Yes, and right now it is scheduled for a May 15th, 2020 release date. If it needs to be delayed, please feel comfortable doing that, because I would like that game to come out well and not rushed.
Yeah, especially as a game that is supposedly going to be getting updates and yada, yada, yada after. I don't want this to be a broken game at once.
Exactly. It sounds like they want this to be a game that lives in perpetuity a bit.
Which is great, as long as what they mean actually is not early access at launch, but we won't tell you that, because that's what a lot of developers are doing.
Knowing that hasn't really been the type of game Crystal has made before, they'd be a weird choice to do that type of game. So I'm hoping it's not, but yeah, it's still an uncertain thing of where the game goes after this, and whether or not that means the campaign that we get when the game comes out will be satisfying. There are a lot of questions about it. Again, Crystal and Marvel, open invitation on the show anytime. Please feel free to come say hi.
I'm still excited for it.
Me too.
I just want to know more about
it. I wish I just had a little more clarity, but I'm hopeful for it, knowing who's involved with it. Moving on from that, very quickly, I want to mention, just because I know, Lucy, you and I talked about it a lot, but Watch Dogs Legion.
Yeah, that was my game of show.
Woo! Yeah, mine as well. We each got to play it. Did you play it, Tom?
Yes, I did.
You ended up playing the last day of the show, right?
Very last appointment of the last day.
Yeah, it was like a 45-minute gameplay demo we got to play, and we got to check out any NPC can become a PC, and see how that works. And it was fun. I got to play as a grandma. I accidentally killed her.
Whoa!
Yeah,
I kept my grandma alive, but I screwed up because I was trying to do it like the mission stealthily, and I screwed up. And in the end, I was just like, like grandma, like it was so pure. What I want to say is that I really, really loved Watch Dogs Legion because it was proof of concept in play. Like I was playing what Ubisoft was promising, that you could play as anyone. It was a demo that had certain beats that we all experienced, but in terms of being able to pick who that character was from the world, we all had different experiences. Clearly, the grandma is
a favorite.
She was on the DedSec team from the get-go for all of us, so we could all choose to play as her
because
they knew she was a hit.
After Helen, it was
absolutely. But I had such a good time with it, and the potential in that game is just mind-blowing. And again, it's a game that's doing something very different and very exciting. And I think for that reason, that was why it was my game of show.
Exactly, yeah, for me too. I've actually never played Watch Dogs before. It's been sort of a blind spot for me this gen, but I was so hyped about it from that first demo when they couldn't tell us it was on PS4 and Xbox One, but it clearly was. And I've always thought the potential of it, and obviously the interconnectedness of the technology it's using, could be such a fascinating gameplay technique. And even just the small thing of, you have the scanner as you have to identify every person, just like the little tidbits of information you get about each person. I think there was one, either the dev told me who was doing the demo with me, or I saw it was like punched a tree in half out of anger. It's just like and they just said the writers just have pages and pages of these like little one-liners that tell you who these characters are, and just like seeding the entire world with that personality and those character traits and being able to pull those into your story is just such an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, and also just exploring, like, London is just such a beautiful place to explore, and it's modern day London. Like, it's not usually we're kind of, you can explore Victorian London and blah blah blah, but this was like, no, this is the London that you kind of know, plus a sort of alternate reality, and it's just such a wonderfully exciting open world.
Yeah. There's so much potential in exploring this version of London that I'm really excited to see more of it.
Yeah.
We do have a couple questions from readers or listeners and viewers that I will want to get to in a little bit about E3 and games we saw and everything. But before that, one little bit of other news crunch stuff before one general topic I want to talk about. Last of Us Part 2's release month may have accidentally been spoiled. Ashley Johnson appeared on a show called Between the Sheets, which is a part of the Critical Role Network. She was being interviewed by Brian W. Foster. They happen to be, in a relationship. So as those interviews go, it was very fun and very light. And at one point he jokingly asks, like, hey, so when's The Last of Us Part 2 coming out? He's like, I ask you all the time and you never tell me. And she goes, I think it's coming in and then stops and gets cut off. And that's all that we hear of it. But, of course, that has led everyone to assume there are not too many months of the year that begin with
September this year? Oh, my God.
August.
So, obviously, the presumption is February 2020 is when Last of Us is possibly coming out. This lines up with some comments that have come out. Jason Schreier from Kotaku has said this. Industry analyst Daniel Ahmad has said this. Is sort of lines up with internal Naughty Dog projections for when the game is going to come out. Naughty Dog has not said anything officially about the release date. Sony has not announced anything, obviously, when we've spoken to them before asking for comment. I believe when Schreier's report came out, they didn't have any response or official comment. But I think that's a reasonable time of year to come out. Sony has...
Everyone else seems to think so.
Yeah, the first quarter of next year is kind of
Lord.
crazy. I feel like Ubisoft may delay Gods and Monsters coming out February 25th.
Sure.
With The Last of Us coming then. But yeah, Sony has made a really great job of taking the last week or so of February and releasing a big game then, or at least planning to. Something like Days Gone was supposed to. It got delayed. But something like Horizon Zero Dawn came out that week. 26th or somewhere in there. So that's been a pretty successful time of year for them. So it wouldn't be shocking to me if that actually ends up being the release date sometime in February.
And it's important to note that since they haven't announced this, even if internally February is their target, they probably haven't released it because they aren't 100% sure they're going to hit that yet,
exactly.
Right? So it could easily be that they are internally targeting February and it could slip, right? And that happens all the time, and you just don't hear about it, and we just didn't hear that February was their internal target. So.
Exactly.
And I think
of course they've got an internal release date.
Of course.
Like that they're aiming to hit.
Yeah. And chances are one of the two key voice actors of the game would probably have an idea of when they should expect their calendar to be a bit busier.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me. I do think we'll see if it moves to March or April or whenever. Obviously, the first Last of Us came out in June, I think the week after E3 in 2013, the best time. The industry loves when big games come out, but of course, it's usually a quieter time, so maybe they'll do that as a fun anniversary thing. But yeah, I don't think we will be waiting after 2020 for Last of Us, which is nice because I just want to play that game so much.
Me too.
Moving on from that, though, I did want to have sort of a more general discussion about E3, and as I know, we are blocked here for an hour or so. If time happens to be running out and you have other meetings to go to, I understand, such as the week after E3. If not, I'm just going to keep this train rolling and ask the very important question as you look at your phones. Don't worry, all the Slacks weren't that important. I was on them, too.
Good, because we're all on the same Slacks.
Yes, yeah. So Sony skipped E3 this year. They were not there in any sort of capacity. They had a state of play right beforehand, a couple weeks before they had the big Death Stranding reveal beforehand. Do you think Sony not appearing at E3 when Microsoft started talking about Project Scarlet, where Nintendo had Breath of the Wild 2, et cetera, do you think Sony skipping E3 hurt them? Or do you think it didn't really do any damage? Do you think it hurt other companies of any kind?
I don't think it did. I mean, Dorno, I know that you've written a piece to this degree, and I happen to agree with you. I don't think that it hurt, Sony or PlayStation, the PlayStation brand. I think that I definitely felt that E3 was quieter this year and less relevant this year. I mean, it still felt hectic being part of it and being part of the grind, the E3, the E3 IGN machine. But it certainly didn't feel as vital. I think that's my takeaway. And again, coupled with the sort of the feeling that some companies were kind of scrabbling to show stuff before it was ready, like Square, like we were just talking about. It felt like it was definitely more an E3 issue than a Sony issue. And I with that said, by all accounts, I don't think this is going to be Sony's, bowing out of E3.
Sure. Yeah. They've never said they'll never return.
Exactly. I just think it's more that what would have been the point of them being there this year? And especially going up against Microsoft's big next-gen console announcements. If Sony had just trotted out the same 3 or 4 games again with minor variations on what they show, you know, what would have been the point? Just be a big waste of money and a waste of everyone's time.
We'd all be sitting here being like, why did they just do the same thing again?
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, for me, it kind of just reiterated that E3 either needs to change up its format or what's the future of E3? I don't know.
So I don't disagree, and I also think that there's Sony had a large presence there, whether they tried to or not, with games like Death Stranding ahead of it, and, you know, Final Fantasy VII, whether it's a console exclusive or permanent exclusive or whatever or not, is still very much a Sony thing that people identify with PlayStation, and so they kind of inadvertently had a presence there just by the games that were announced and talked about, even if they didn't have their own presence there. That said, just to play devil's advocate a little bit, I don't think it hurt them at all from my perspective and from the perspective of covering the show and consuming all of that stuff. I am interested if it is in the perspective of somebody who is maybe a little bit more casually watching E3, somebody who just doesn't really read sites like IGN every week of every year, but during E3, they tune in and check everything out. Is that person going to be like, oh man, Sony's on the down, you know? Like, is the person who just tunes in more casually, you know, which is nothing wrong with that.
I just have to, I just have to so aggressively agree with you, because a lot of the people who I caught up with at the show who were there very casually and just sort of checking out the news beat. Like, I was working with some more mainstream people this time around for some extracurricular outside of IGN stuff. And a lot of them were just like, had no idea that Sony PlayStation wasn't there in any kind of official capacity.
Yeah.
And why, yeah, I mean, really, like...
To them,
things are still appearing on PlayStation consoles,
yeah.
So why would you know any better?
Yeah, it's one of those things where the mainstream, it's funny, I wrote an op-ed during E3 for the Nintendo Direct that ended up not being true because we were not expecting the Breath of the Wild reveal.
Yeah.
But this is the time of year when every single mainstream outlet, in USA Today's, Entertainment Weekly's, Hollywood Reporters, all of them look at the gaming industry and wonder what's going on. And Sony not being there, I wonder if it's not like Sony's on the downward trend, but like, I guess Sony doesn't have much going on right now. Like,
right.
And the one caveat I would say is, since we're probably not expecting PS5 to launch before next E3, I don't think it'll hurt them too much in the long run. Because especially they are kind of, I think they skipped because they know this fall is going to be, you know, there's Death Stranding, but other than that, it's the Medieval remake, it's Concrete Genie, the things that aren't necessarily the marquee AAA. This is why people bought a PlayStation necessarily, as good as those things can look. So I do think it may have some like short-term ramifications for the mainstream, but I think if Sony continues to have a presence, and they probably will when it comes to next gen, it probably won't hurt them too much in the long run, I would guess. Yeah,
I think taking a year off was a very smart move, and I think if Sony's back next year, that's awesome. I anticipate that they will be.
I think feeling how dead West Hall was this year too, like without the Sony booth there, and especially without Sony and Microsoft there, it was such a ghost town in comparison.
So yeah,
literally because Luigi's Mansion was there.
But just to give you guys for those who have never been to E3 and don't really understand, you know, there's West Hall and South Hall are the big ones, and South Hall tends to be where all the sort of the Bethesdas and the Ubisofts all gather, and then West Hall was always Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft.
Yeah.
And without Sony and Microsoft there, it was like
there's Nintendo,
tumbleweeds.
There was the other big booths there were
Oculus.
Nintendo. Oculus was there, but they were mostly showing off a lot of stuff that we'd already seen. It was mostly just like a presence thing. Sega was there, and Sega had a pretty dang cool booth, but it was also a little bit of like things we've seen. and then Xseed had a pretty nice showing.
Yeah.
And then everything else was like Geico Gaming and things that very much felt like they were there for industry folk and no one else.
Yeah, it was a very stark difference from years past where Sony takes over, I'd say, close to half of West Hall.
Yeah.
So if anything, to me, the ESA is probably like, okay, how low do we have to go to make sure they get a booth space next year?
Yeah, and that's I think the thing that we talked about this in the hotel, which you guys will hear on Drunk Beyond, but the
Sorry, everyone. Terry Schwartz, our entertainment editor-in-chief, almost
Just
barged in.
Cheeky little face.
But we talked about this a little bit on Drunk Beyond, but yeah, I think that this definitely hurt. Regardless of whether it hurt Sony or not, it definitely hurt the ESA and E3 more than Sony.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, definitely.
That's, you can read my piece. It's probably, if you're watching this on IGN.com, connected to that piece, this video. But yeah, to me, I think the biggest loser of Sony not being there is the ESA and E3 in general. Because as big as some of the other topics were this year, it was sort of a down year overall. And so to have even one of the biggest 3 console makers gone makes it down even more. What's interesting, fun fact from the Hollywood Reporter Twitter spoke to them about like the biggest tweeted about companies of the year. Sony was among the top 3 most tweeted about publishers during E3.
Yeah.
And they weren't even there. So, I mean, at least in terms of like, the online community talking about games constantly.
Do you know what it was like? It was like the coolest kid in school skipping prom.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
I sure didn't skip prom.
It definitely proved.
I didn't have a prom because I'm from New Zealand.
Ours was on a boat.
Ooh.
It was on a boat that sailed around Manhattan. And that sounds really fancy and cool, but the reason we did that and not have it at like our actual high school or somewhere else was because the year before, a bunch of kids rented a house in the Hamptons after prom and just got blasted. And they got so in trouble that the school took measures to be like, okay, we're not going to allow kids to go off on their own after prom. So it was like, it's on a boat, so they can't escape off anywhere.
Yeah, you can't leave early.
And then like
that's clever.
You had to have a parent come pick you up.
Oh, those kids, those Hampton kids ruined it for all of you.
Yep, yeah, they had one fun weekend, and then everyone had... I mean, like, the boat's cool, don't get me wrong, but...
But you're still stuck on it with your teachers.
Yeah, you're stuck on a boat with... It was a Catholic high school, so you're stuck on a boat with a bunch of, like, clerical members and the Glee Club techer, and it's not exactly a crazy party.
The teachers in this instance...
I'm not saying anything.
I know.
The teachers in this metaphor are Mario and Sonic go to the Olympic Games 2020.
Yeah.
Right? That's
there. Okay. That's pretty much what that is.
Cool.
But yeah, it was definitely a weird year. I don't think it's going to stop Sony from being at E3 next year necessarily, given next gen will be such a big, important thing. We talked about it a little bit on Drunk Beyond, just in general in the office, but like the Project Scarlet unveiling this year, I don't think was the like knock it out of the park thing it needed to be for Xbox.
Definitely wasn't.
No.
And especially because their talking points were so similar to what Sony talked about in that Wired article where they debuted the next gen was happening for them. And it was solid state drive, faster load times, backward compatibility, even if it's with more generations there than it may be with PlayStation. It was still this, the talking points were very similar.
They basically said everything in that Microsoft conference about Project Scarlet that they did in the article that came out for PS5 or whatever
it was almost like a one-to-one sort of thing. And so
Microsoft also had like a fancy kind of annoying video cut together with it that didn't really tell anybody anything.
And then 5 hours later, we had to see if Bethesda did anything crazy. So
right.
It was weirdly, it felt like it was one of the biggest topics, of course, on IGN during E3, but Project Scarlet felt weirdly...
anticlimactic?
Yes.
The fact that they didn't show anything was just kind of surprising.
Yeah, just Halo.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, looked awesome.
Yeah.
And especially with the sort of the promise that it was going to be a actual console, yet we didn't see an actual console.
It just felt like them going, yep, we're doing that too. Cool, guys.
We're going to do it someday
We'll
soon.
talk about it later.
And I think, like,
Here's
both
some
of them...
talking heads, because everyone loves that.
I think the funniest thing for me about that video, and it's not a knock against PlayStation where they are right now or where Xbox is going, like, I still think next gen is anyone's game in terms of who can end up being the console leader, because there's no clear cut which box will be better. of course, like I can say I like PlayStation exclusives more than I like Xbox exclusives currently, but I also loved Halo and played that all the damn time. And you bet I'm going to eventually get whatever Scarlet is to play Halo Infinite probably. So
Just get a PC.
Never. So yeah, E3, obviously, there was a lot to talk about even without Sony there. We have that Drunk Beyond where you can listen to a lot more. I will say I haven't said yet on the show. Not for the kids.
Yes.
It's not extremely vulgar, but there are some curses in there. So just keep an ear out for that. You can't keep an eye out for the curses.
I hexed Lucy.
You did. It was pretty impressive.
You put the liquor in the people and they get cursing.
I'd just like to say I was drinking Earl Grey tea and nothing else.
Tom was our
He was.
designated podcaster.
I was.
On the show. Look, I may have had 2 drinks, but I remember what you said.
What were we drinking? We were drinking
Moscow Mules.
Moscow Mules. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That was my go-to when I first moved to San Francisco because someone was like, "You should try this," and I did, and I enjoyed it, and I just never chose another drink.
And they were strong Moscow Mules.
Oh yeah,
well. Woo.
yeah. They were like, "Oh, all these nerds are finally leaving us. Let's just get them out of here."
Get rid of the alcohol while we're at it.
Yeah, bars don't need that stuff. Anyway, before we wrap up, I want to quickly do some rapid fire. I reached out for questions from the group, the Podcast Beyond Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/Podcast Beyond. You can go there, ask us questions, hang out with the group, talk about what you're playing, all these things. One question I did want to bring up completely out of left field and also just get fun reactions. Jess asked, top 5 features you want to see in a Vita or PSP successor. And I have the unfortunate news to break to Jess that there probably will not be one. But if there was, give me one. Just give me one feature you'd want in a new Sony.
Just unlimited relations. Unlimited relationships between the Sony, between Sony and third party support for that machine. That's what I want. Like, I just want it to be a Switch.
just a Sony Switch.
A Sony Switch.
Yeah.
That's my feature.
Tom, what about you?
I'd like a touchscreen, a little kickstand, removable controllers. I'd like it to plug into a dock to work on your TV.
Ooh, interesting.
And I'd like it to have Super Mario Maker 2.
So basically the answer is for both of us.
Make it a Switch.
Make it a
Switch, please. That's really mean. I don't know. I
just don't know where you... I mean...
That's unfortunately also my real answer is I don't have a desire for another handheld. I don't want, and that's not against Sony either. I don't want Nintendo to make another handheld because I'm really scared that they'll be like the 4DS and come out with something like that.
You can smell Mario now.
And
no, thank you.
I don't want I'm just want the Switch to live. I know there will be other handhelds in the future and that's fine, but for now I just want the Switch to live.
Why can't I think of the name? The little yellow crank thing.
Oh, Playdate?
Playdate, yeah.
Playdate looks cool.
Yeah, Playdate looks cool. Jordan asked, what are you doing to unwind post E3?
I went to Six Flags Magic Mountain.
Did you have a good time?
I had such a good time. Now, for anyone who's planning to go there, here are just a couple of tips. Get the Flash Pass. It's worth the extra money. And ride X2 and Satsu, I think is how you pronounce it. Ride those 2 coasters, make those 2 your priority, but also don't do them back to back because they're both the most intense coasters in the park and you will it'll be too much. So take a break, maybe ride the Twisted Colossus in between the 2, but make sure you ride those 2.
That's what you do to unwind?
Well, listen. I went with my girlfriend. We went on a romantic theme park getaway, and I hadn't seen her in 9 days, so it was kind of that more of a vibe than an unwinding vibe. But it's still, I was exercising some E3 demons with that amount of adrenaline pumping through my body. It was a really good time.
Yeah.
Tom, what about you?
I slept a lot. I just didn't move for 3 days, and it was great. I kind of hurt my hip when I was walking around E3, and I just spent a couple of days just playing video games and hanging out, and it was real good.
Sounds good.
I woke up the day after E3 ended to learn that my dog was sick for the weekend. So I have not unwound just yet. He's better now. Loki is okay, but it was not the most non-stressful weekend. So yeah, I'm looking forward to next weekend to rest a little bit. Edgar asks, Keanu Reeves or Chuck Norris? Quick answers. No explanation.
Keanu Reeves there's not even, I would choose a lot of people over Chuck Norris.
I think you offended Lucy with that question.
Keanu, yes.
Yeah, I'm with her.
You Keanu as well? Yeah, I'm going to say Keanu also. Moving on from that, Mike asks, if Beyond had a game and a stage show at E3, what random celebrity would you have present it? let's take Keanu out of it because obviously
That's
he's a good answer. Who would you have present a game at Beyond's E3 press conference 2020?
I'm going to go with Chrissy Teigen because she's really funny.
Yeah, she'd be really good.
And I just think she's hilarious. And I think that her presenting anything is just such great value. That's my answer.
I'm going to go for Christopher Walken.
Nice.
That's good.
And specifically Christopher Walken playing his character in the hit Adam Sandler movie Click, where he plays the guy in the Beyond section in the back.
Wow, that's so specific. I mean, but like I am also very much like of the opinion that like you have one celebrity that's non-related to the industry and the rest of the time you have industry figures.
Sure, yeah.
But you have the one token celeb because everyone loves a good celeb.
You get Mr. Caffeine. But then you get also the developers. I would choose John Mulaney.
Oh, that's a good one
But
too.
in character as... I think he's George St. Geeglin. I'm going to look it up, but as his character from Oh Hello on Broadway.
Not Spider-Ham?
Not as Spider-Ham. Spider-Ham would make a cameo talking to his character.
Okay, fair.
He would be this old acerbic New Yorker man. Who, yeah.
I would
I'd
pick...
take it.
I'm going back. I'm going to pick Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland all together.
Okay, I know. I'm just going to do
And
one
Yuri
more.
Lowenthal, 4 in a row.
I'm going to do Jinx Monsoon from RuPaul's Drag Race Season 5.
We're getting way off.
She's a massive gamer and also
that's cool.
Just, again, incredibly funny and like wonderful on stage.
There you go. Now you have a whole list to choose from.
We have 5 celebrities there.
If anybody of
5
the
presenter, well, like 4 with you.
if any of the people we listed are listeners, come on the show.
Please come on the show.
Please come on the show. Jinx, come on. That's all I've got. Come on. Like, what's that character? Gil from The Simpsons? Like, throw me a bone.
Gil really needs this.
Lucy really needs this joke, you guys. Morgan asks, Blood and Truth was #1 physical release in its launch week in the UK. Is PSVR entering the mainstream at last, or is it showing the decline in physical sales? I would argue neither, and more so that PSVR is getting bigger. You know, it's sold, I think, around 5 million were the last numbers, 4.92 or something like that. It's definitely selling well. I wouldn't say that's mainstream yet, but it is becoming more popular. Blood and Truth came out at a relatively quieter time of year. It is also set in Europe. And, you know, people love to see things where they're from. If a movie comes out in New York, you bet I was always at that movie if it takes place in New York. Yep, I stood up and cheered.
Woo!
The second I see the Statue of Liberty, I'm like, yeah, I visit that every day, New York. But no, I don't think it's necessarily emblematic of both of those. I do think it's great to see that health for PSVR happening right now. And I definitely think we're going to continue to see PSVR support, especially if they can make games like that. But yeah, what do you both think?
No, I totally agree. I also think that it just speaks to the power of like polished, big budget looking VR games will get eyes on them, right? Like no offense to anything like Trover and Falcon Age, and those games are great, but Blood and Truth has a dude with a gun on the box and looks a little more mainstream. I don't know if that means PSVR is getting more mainstream, but that is just visually a game that kind of appeals to the Call of Duty gamer more than a game like Falcon Age might. And
it looks like the poster for a Jason Statham movie,
right? That
you get to play.
Whether that's a good or a bad thing, you get to choose, but it appeals to a wider audience.
Yeah, I think there was market research a few years back where it was like box art that traditionally has people's faces on it, like human faces, will sell exponentially better than even the most beautiful box art you can find. Like well-crafted art will always lose out to, oh, that's a face. I know I'm going to be a person in that game. Last but not least, Nathan asks, what do you think the timing of the next state of play is, and what should Sony's strategy be after missing an underwhelming E3? He asks if that was the right move. We talked about that a bit. Mostly I wanted to ask this because I truly believe in between us recording and this posting, they'll announce the next state of play. So I just want to have on record how wrong we are. So when do you think the next state of play is going to be?
I mean, I think it should be relatively soon. I think that The Last of Us is definitely poised to have a presence, have another marketing hit very soon. I'm not sure when will that be.
What was the time
because
between the first two?
Gamescom.
It was 6 or 7 weeks.
Do we know if
so we're right at the time for a new one.
Is Sony going to be at Gamescom?
We don't know. They haven't officially said, I don't believe, whether or not. It's one of those ones where it's like they missed E3. It's a good opportunity. Gamescom is, for reference, August 21st to the 24th this year.
Yeah, I think we'll get a state of play in the within the next month. That's for sure.
I would say probably before Comic-Con would be my guess.
Yeah.
Sometime early July. Probably the Monday after July 4th weekend, just to make it a fun time to come back after a long weekend. But yeah, I think we're going to get one pretty soon. And I think especially because most of, if not all, the games from the first state of play have pretty much come out at this point. Crash Team Racing is kind of like the last AAA one that was in that first direct, or that first state of play, God. And so I think that's kind of emblematic of, hey, that last one's out of style. The one before it still, there's stuff to come, but a lot of that stuff is 2020. Let's see what else you have. So I think we'll get one pretty soon. Other than that, I have a memory card to read, if you two don't mind sticking around for this. Tom, give me a memory card jingle.
It's a memory card.
Bah.
Thank you.
So I just finish it off for you.
Now, as I keep looking for the one I wanted, Lucy, you give me another memory card jingle, and Tom, you finish the jingle for her in reverse.
My name's Memory Card, and I'm here to say, something. PlayStation memories your way. I don't know. I hated what I just did. If I could just reverse time and undo what I just did.
Nope, it's all on the show.
We're recording this straight to plastic, sending them out on vinyls to all the listeners like we do every week. It's done.
The records are being pressed as we speak.
The collector's edition.
Yeah.
Vinyl.
Yeah, head to twitter.com/jmdornbush to find out purchase details. Make sure to subscribe. That's how I get subscribers now. I just lie about vinyl editions of this show. This memory card comes from Liam. Liam wrote in with the headline, Memory Card, Love, Marriage, and Treasure. I do want to preface this by saying this has Uncharted 4 A Thief's End spoilers.
Oh.
So if you have not played Uncharted 4 A Thief's End, have you played it, Tom?
No.
You haven't?
No.
Oh, no.
Should I leave?
Oh, I didn't expect this. I thought you
leave.
had.
No.
I don't want to ruin this for you.
I'll leave.
I can find another.
No, I'll leave. Read that one. You're not going to start that one and then leave that guy hanging. I'm just going to leave.
That's true. I'm going to feel really bad.
I'm going to join the 6 other people listening who have not joined it, and I'm going to leave. So it was lovely being on. Enjoy your memory.
Thank you, Tom. I appreciate it.
Thanks,
Lucy's sorry
Tom.
to stuck with me.
I'm here. I obviously played Uncharted 4.
I'm a failure. I'm sorry. Goodbye.
It's okay. Go play Uncharted 4 right now.
Doing it.
Liam wrote, Beyond, choosing which of my PlayStation memories to share was a tough ask. Over 20 years, my interactive experiences have influenced my relationships, personalities, and worldviews. I've overcome grief, staved off depression, formed friendships, experienced different cultural perspectives and world histories, all with Snake, Jack, Crash, Kratos, Gabe, Joel, and all my other avatars. However, the memory card I'm going to express is more recent and about love. My wife is not a gamer. With the exception of a temporary Super Mario 64 obsession, she's never seen the value of diving into a digital world and immersing yourself in another character's dramas until she saw me playing Uncharted 2. She loved watching me play Uncharted 2. The combination of accessible storytelling, blockbuster production, and a hot dude in wet jeans was all the hook she needed. So I invited her to play through Uncharted 1 with me. Very simple rules. When you die or see a chapter title, you pass the controller. Since then, we have played through the trilogy in this style countless times. Her camera control is still awful, but she shared my hobby, and I get genuine delight in seeing her, say next to me, getting joy from a medium that has given me so much. I think sit next to me. Yeah. When Uncharted 4 came out, we were ridiculously excited. We were all ready for an amazingly epic game about treasure hunting, shooting guns, and solving puzzles. Shooting goons also. What we got instead was an insanely well-written and beautifully acted story of how to build a strong marriage with treasures, goons, and puzzles on top. Playing Nate and Elena's story together as husband and wife was so special. Nate's refusal to understand how his wife makes him stronger, Elena's initial failure to see what drives him, how they are stronger together. These feelings are so real and so human. The third act of Uncharted 4, where these two start to understand each other again, was utterly joyful to play, and I felt like we went through the journey with them. Again, spoilers coming up for Uncharted 4 Thief's End. When Elena did the death fake out after escaping Avery's tunnel, we seriously couldn't hold our shit together. God, the tears. I could have killed Druckmann and Straley for that. Joke, those guys rock. These characters were so real to us, and our emotional attachment is so strong that it was a while before our heart rates recovered enough to continue playing. Don't even get me started on how utterly perfect that epilogue was. We were just a big old ball of tears during that sequence. Side note, when we saw Booksmart this weekend and realized that Caitlin Deaver also played Cassie Drake, we felt like such proud parents. Thank you, Liam, for sharing that story with us.
That is a lovely story, Liam. And also, play Uncharted 4 if you haven't already. It's a great game. also check out Booksmart if you haven't already. It's a great movie.
2 great recommendations from one memory card story. Thank you so much, Liam, for sending that in. For everyone else who has, we have a lot of memory cards to catch up on, but please keep sending them in. You can send new memory card stories to beyond@ign.com with the subject line memory card in it, so I know what it's for. You can also, of course, send questions for Brapid Fire, put that in the subject line as well. General comments, whatever, we'll read them on the show as they become pertinent and whatnot. My inbox is a bit full from E3, so sorry if you sent anything during that week, but we'll see for the weeks to come. Again, that's beyond@ign.com. This has been Beyond, episode 595. My name is Jonathon Dornbush. You can find me at JM Dornbush on Twitter and Instagram, posting more photos of my dog now that he is healthy and wonderful again. And
Good.
Nipping at all the grass in the yard. Lucy, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at LUCE, Luce, OBRIEN, O'Brien. Luce O'Brien at Twitter and on Instagram. That's it.
And Tom is at Tom R. Marks. Again, I don't know what the R stands for, but I will find out one day.
He's also got a great pie Instagram called
Bow Pies?
Bow Tie Pies?
Bow Pies.
Bow Pies.
Just Bow Pies.
Bow Pies.
Bow Pies.
That
yes.
actually makes more sense than the one that I just said.
That's why we pay Tom the bucks.
That's it.
Of course.
And me, no bucks.
It's weird you work for free, but
It's crazy.
It's
And yet I
honorable,
turn up to work every day still.
it's amazing. Well, actually, you're going on vacation, so
It's true.
we're going to talk about how you found the money for the vacation anyway.
Yeah.
Of course, Beyond is live every Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific at beyond.ign.com, youtube.com/IGNBeyond, and your favorite podcast services around the world. Thank you so much for watching, for listening, for paying attention to all of our craziness during E3. And as always, Beyond.
Beyond.